This is the Hallmarkies podcast, and I'm very excited today to talk to another member of the Hallmark family. We are talking to our first editor today. I'm Rachel, and we're talking to Randy Carter. This is so fun. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So why don't you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about how you became an editor.
Okay, well, my name is Randy Carter. I'm originally from Flint, Michigan, and so I grew up there, and always sort of was kind of a storyteller when I was young, and that sort of was my entree into editing. I grew up in Flint, Michigan. For those who don't know, is like one of these towns. From like they used to make movies about these kind of towns in like the 70s and 80s. It's the kind of town where everybody grows up and can't wait to get out of because there's no opportunities in that town, and there's even less in Flint, Michigan now than when I was a kid.
Yeah.
So as soon as I graduated from high school, I joined the Navy. I was in the Navy for 8 years, sort of trying to figure out what I wanted to do. And when I was done with that, I went to college at the University of Wisconsin. And then when I was finished with that, I went to the Vancouver Film School because I decided I wanted to be involved in film, not quite sure what yet. And it was there at the Vancouver Film School that I really fell in love with editing as a great storytelling tool. More so, I think, than almost any other job, even more so than all the crew members who contribute to the story. Absolutely. The editor is the last person really, other than, the director who's there with you side by side, to have your hands on the film and mold it and shape the story. And there's so much that can be done there. And I really fell in love with that process. And so once I graduated from there, I fell in love also with the Pacific Northwest. So I tried to stay there for a little bit, but there was nothing going on there. So eventually I bit the bullet and I moved down to LA and started looking around for editing gigs, and the rest is history. I've been editing for close to 25 years. Yikes.
Wow. That's really, really cool. Yeah. So, yeah, you said you had done some directing?
I did. I mean, obviously when I was in film school, I directed some stuff years and years ago, but I really didn't take to it. But after 25 years of editing, I recently directed a thriller for Lifetime a couple years ago, and I'm planning to do more. I'm in talks to do another thriller potentially next year or even later this year, although later this year doesn't seem like it's going to happen, so it's probably going to be next year. And that's kind of a fun thing. I don't know that I would ever give up editing because I love it so much, but directing is fun as well. So when I get the opportunity to do that, I love to do that as well.
That's really cool. Yeah, I mean, it's nice when you find your niche, find your spot, but then every once in a while kind of going out of that spot as well.
Yeah, I mean, part of it is I'm a big believer for people who are in the industry, or I guess in life, anybody, is to have goals and always be, moving the goalpost forward about what you want to do. And for the longest time, and you have to set little goals, like, don't set your goal like way so far ahead that it seems insurmountable to get there. You set little goals along the way, little goals along your path to that ultimate goal, and then those become easier to achieve, and you build up your confidence to move to the next goal and the next one and the next one. And for the longest time, my ultimate goal with all these little ones in between was, to be making a living, working as an editor on projects that I enjoy. And I sort of hit that goal, 3 or 4 years ago. And I said, okay, well, what's next?
Yeah.
And, even though I was loving what I was doing, I'm so fortunate. I work really hard. But what's my next goal? And so I thought, maybe I should try to direct, and that became my goal. Mm-hmm. And I had a few things to do, and I talked to producers I worked for, and I got the opportunity. And so now my goal is to do a little bit more of that. But again, I'll never give up editing because it really is my passion.
Cool. Great. I'm so glad. So yeah, I was curious. You had said that the editor's kind of the last stamp on the movie. Like, how does that work with of like what choices the director makes versus what choices the editor makes?
Well, yeah. I mean, when I say the editor is the editor is the last person who finally sees it all together. But in the post production chain, the editor is actually the lowest man on the pole in terms of creative choices. So the way that it
Oh.
generally works is I get dailies every day, and I get notes from the director via the script supervisor who gives notes. Like, I like this take, or I like this line on this take sometimes. And then sometimes there aren't any notes. And it's like, here's 3 takes, and you sort of choose yourself. So the editor sits by him or herself and assembles the entire show, and cuts the show together and has like the editor's cut. And then that's what I then show the director. And it's the whole film complete, temp sound effects, temp music. I mean, it doesn't look quite like you could air it, but close. And show that to the director. And then the director comes in and sits down and starts giving his notes. And sometimes the notes are, let's look at an alternate take of that line, or can we move this scene because this scene could go later, or do we list that scene out altogether? Like, we don't need that scene, all kinds of stuff. I mean, so the director comes in and gives all of his notes, and the editor is like, just driving the bus at that point, but the director's telling you where to go. And then once that's done, the producer comes in and gets his notes. When we're working for somebody like Hallmark, the producer, which is the production company that's actually making the film, usually doesn't have a whole lot of notes because the network will ultimately have notes, but sometimes there'll be some notes that the producer will have. And so we'll do those notes. Then we send it up to the network, to Hallmark or whoever the network is in that case. And then we start getting their notes. And so ultimately it's the network that has the final sort of creative say. And of course, before the even shooting starts, I mean, the network is involved in like the writing of the script and the development of the story and all that. So they know what they're getting. They just now see it and will give their notes. So ultimately, there's like 4 layers of people who are giving notes, which means sometimes you can look at a film and it's not at all what the editor sort of like initially intended because there are a lot of hands in the pie.
So you kind of
as you go along.
You kind of make a rough draft, sort of, would you say?
Well, I think rough draft, it's more than a rough draft. I mean, I like to deliver my cut. Like, if they wanted to, my cut could be the cut that goes on the air, beyond the running time issue, which we can talk about. There's always, there's a certain running time that you have to meet for television. Right. And so a lot of times the early cuts are too long. So part of the process with the director and the producer is like, okay, we know we have to lose. Sometimes we have to lose 15, 20 minutes.
Right.
We're 15, 20 minutes long. So it's like, what can we lose? So even though you might like something, you're like, we can lose that.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't call it a rough draft. I mean, some people use the term assembly, which also I don't think is very accurate. I think the most accurate term is probably first cut.
First cut.
I mean, it is a cut. It's a cut. It's all together. And I've chosen performances. I've chosen moments of scenes that I think work. And so it's a first cut. And then there will be additional cuts as other people weigh in with their notes. And obviously my first cut is also guided by those notes that we get from the director. If the director says, oh, I really like take 2. I know I did 5 takes of this. Take 2 is the best. But use take 3 for the end because I like the way take 3 ended. I'll get notes like that. So I know that that's where the director wants to go. Now, sometimes I follow those director's notes and it doesn't quite work. So I'll do it a little bit differently. And then when the director comes in, I'll say, hey, I know you said you liked the end of take 3, but it didn't work because of this. And he'll be like, oh, yeah, you're right. Or he'll say, no, put it back. I like that end of take 3. And, that this is just the give and take, the process.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. Has there been a director that you've worked with like the most, or have you had a wide variety?
I mean, over my career, I've had a super wide variety. For Hallmark, I have almost exclusively worked with Peter Sullivan, and I've done a bunch of Lifetime movies for him as well. Peter and I are very good friends, and I've worked with him for the last, oh my gosh, I mean, almost 10 years. Is that possible? No, it can't be possible. I think it is. Holy moly. Yeah, so I've worked with him a lot. He does a lot of our Hallmark movies. I mean, and does a lot of also does a lot of like Lifetime movies and other Christmas movies and thrillers and whatever. So, I mean, a lot of editors develop a relationship with a director, and so we'll work with the same directors over and over again. Just because it's a very, when you're in the editing room, especially once the director comes in, it's just the two of you. So the relationship has to work, and you have to have that give and take. And if you don't get along, it's just, and through no one's fault, it's not going to work out. Peter and I get along very well. And it helps now because I know his style. So when I get his dailies and his notes, I mean, I know what he's looking for. I know what he wants. And so I can try to guide my cut to what I know he's trying to do. And 9 times out of 10, I'm correct in what he's trying to do. And then there's that 10th time where he comes in and was like, what were you thinking?
Yeah. Was there any time where you really had to sort of fight for a cut that you really believed in?
Sure. I mean, the way that it works is you're only allowed to fight one up, right? So like I'll fight, and I say fight, it's not, I mean, it's discussion. It's discussion. Right. Yeah. But sometimes the discussion is stronger than others. Sure. My discussions would be with the director. If the director says, I want this take or I want this, and if I really strongly feel about it, I'll be like, I don't think that's going to work. The thing is, one of the things the editor has to do is you always have to show him what he wants. If he says, no, put that other take in, or no, let's be on this moment for that. Even if you don't think it's working, you show it to him, and then you try to explain why you think it's not working. And if he says, no, I think it works, I don't care what you say. Not that he doesn't care what I say, but I think it works, then that's what you go with. Now, then when it goes to the producer, when the producer gives his notes, if the director and I don't agree with them, that director has that fight with the producer. Right. And then if the network has notes that we don't like, the producer has the disagreement with the network. So you only can fight one above your weight class. But also sometimes just speaking of notes, sometimes the notes are not specific, like use a different take. Sometimes it's like, this scene feels a little slow, or, there's a little less energy here. What can we do? And so even within the note, there can be choices that we can make. But me and the director, by that time, it's me and the director working on the notes together. And if the network says, oh, this scene is a little slow, or we're not happy with this particular performance, what can you do? It's not like specifically like cut this line or lose this scene, which are very easy to do because, okay, I'll cut that line or I'll lose that scene. But if it's like, this scene is too slow, what can you do to pick it up? Or this performance isn't quite working. It's a little too flat, or it's a little too big. What can you do? That's when you got to dig in and you make the choices about how to address what they want.
Uh-huh. Interesting. Is it hard sometimes to figure out a natural cut for the commercials?
Well, it's interesting. The scripts are written with the act breaks in them.
Okay.
Right? So they're written to have a natural ending. However, almost always those act breaks don't end up being the final act break, because there's a running time requirement for each act. Like the first act is longer. First act is like 18 minutes or so. Then it goes to the second act is like 12 minutes. Third act is, within reason, not like 12 minutes exactly, but it's got to be somewhere in that region. And the first 4 acts have to be at least 50 minutes. These are the rules. So, and script is written for that. But as we just said, if we're 20 minutes long, well, we got to lose some scenes. Well, if I just lost 2 scenes in Act 1 is now too short. So we got to move where the act break is. So that's why sometimes you get an act break that feels like, oh, that's not really probably the best place for an act break, but you try as best you can to find like a good place for an act break that makes sense. But they almost always are not as scripted, although they are scripted with the act breaks, and then they almost always change. Just because, as I said, if we're too long, you got to take stuff out, or we're rarely too short, but if you're too long, you take stuff out, and then that all of a sudden changes the running time. So yeah.
Because
and in the end, the network sorry to interrupt you. In the end, the network decides where the act breaks are. Mm-hmm. We've got notes sometimes, move that act break to here, move that act break to there, and so they know where they want it to end.
Yeah, because when we interviewed our friend Nina Weinman, who's a writer, she said that on her film Stop the Wedding, that they called her and were like, we're short, and they had her write like a whole a new scene between two characters.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're right there on the
Being short,
fly.
I mean, it can get very frustrating when you're long and you have to cut stuff.
Yeah.
Because you end up cutting stuff that you're like, well, this is really good, but it then becomes, well, can we live without it? Because you have to be at the running time that they want.
Right.
But that's much better position to be in than being short. Because if you're short, what can you do? The tendency is to try to like let scenes play longer than they should, which is never good. You try not to do that.
Yeah.
And then if you end up having to reshoot stuff, I mean, no one wants to get to that moment where you have to go and reshoot material or, shoot additional material.
Yeah.
It's happened to me before on other shows, never on a Hallmark show, but on other shows I've been short and had to shoot additional material.
Have you done all TV movies, or have you done episodic talk television?
I've never done episodic network television. I've done a few episodic things way back in the past for like some off-brand cable shows and some web series. Like when web series were really web series before it's streaming, which I guess technically isn't a web series, but back when literally it was just like a web series. I've done a few of those, but I've never done like network episodic television. All of the Hallmark episodics are done in Canada.
Right.
And I think they even post up in Canada, which I went to film school in Canada, but I'm not Canadian, so I can't work up there. Because believe me, I would be in Vancouver this moment if I could, and be working up there because I love that city so much.
Yeah.
But once my student visa ran out, I had to leave town. So I have not. I've mainly done TV movies, and then back in the day, I mean, I've been in this business long. It used to be a big direct to video and direct to DVD business. We did a lot of like action thrillers and things like that, and even kids movies, Christmas movies were direct to DVD. That doesn't. I mean, I guess occasionally it still works, but that business has gone way by the wayside. And so I sort of transitioned into these, Hallmark Lifetime TV movies. There's only about 3 or 4 networks that still even do TV movies.
Yeah.
So.
Very cool. Very interesting. Your first one for Hallmark, I think, was the 12 Gifts of Christmas. That right?
12 Gifts. 12 Gifts was my first one, shot in the beautiful city of Salt Lake City. Yes. That was my first one. That was my first one also that I went on location for. I went out to Salt Lake City, and we shot 12 Gifts of Christmas, which was very exciting for me. It was my first time in Utah. It was my first on location in out of the state of California, which it was a lot of fun. My biggest memory from that film is I became really, really good friends with the lead actor, Aaron O'Connell, and Katrina Law. Katrina is so busy, I never get to see her anymore. But Aaron and I became really, really good friends, and he's such an amazing guy. He just got married last year. Unfortunately, I couldn't go because it was in Italy, but I did get the invite. But yeah, he's a wonderful guy, and I've cut him in a couple of movies. But that was, in fact, I cut him in a movie before that, but I hadn't met him. So I met him out there in Utah, and just a nice guy. So that's my biggest memory from that film.
Do you often go on
that wonderful experience?
Are you often there on set, on location?
I am. 12 Gifts of Christmas was sort of the first one that I went on location for, and the reason, ordinarily I sometimes don't. Like for some of the later ones, I didn't. I was in LA, like I was mentioned to you earlier. But for 12 Gifts, it was a very like last minute. Like with these Christmas movies, which have to come out at Christmas, are getting made later and later in the year. We used to always do our Christmas movies like in June.
Right.
And now all of a sudden we're doing them in September or October, or, we did one in November.
Yeah.
So because it's so late in the day, I have to be there because, I was talking about the process where, I have the whole film assembled, then the director comes in. When you're shooting a Christmas movie that late, it can't work that way. So what happens is on his days off, when he's not shooting, the director comes in, looks at the scenes I've already cut, gives his notes already, even though the whole film isn't done.
That's amazing.
So that I can then have his notes, so that by the time they've wrapped, we have a director's cut done, like a day or two after they wrap. And usually at that point, the producer just sort of like says, send it to the network. And the network is on board. Hallmark was on board. Like, this is super fast. So the network is really good about knowing that they can't dilly dally. They've got to turn around the notes really quick, and we're standing by ready to do the notes.
Amazing.
So that's why they initially sent me out. And then I think they just liked that I was out there because the director could come and see stuff, and they didn't have to ship dailies back to LA. I was right there on set, and I don't mind going out because I Salt Lake City is a wonderful city. And we're all over Utah. I say Salt Lake, but we're all up and down the I-15 corridor.
Yeah.
There in Utah, we travel all over the place. But I don't mind, and they like having me there, so I'm happy to go out when they want me to.
That's amazing. And I can't believe that the movie is like basically, what did you call it? Not the rough cut. You called it the assembly cut?
The first cut.
The first cut. That the first cut is done 2 days, like a couple days after filming.
Oh, no.
Amazing.
The other thing that the director's cut is done a couple of days after they wrap, because that instance, because the director is coming in and basically giving his notes on scenes that I have completed, but not able to see the whole thing. So those 2 days is usually like 1 day for me to get the last day's footage and assemble that, and then 1 day for the director to come in and watch the whole film and so he can see it in total and give any final notes before we send to the network. Now, the good news is when that process happens, while we're waiting for the network to give notes, sometimes we can go in, the director can do some other things. And when the network notes come in, that gives the director another opportunity to maybe tweak some things that he wanted to do but didn't have time for. So whenever the schedule is that short, and it's not always that way, but occasionally it's happened. The worst one for Hallmark, I say worst, but the closest one was Christmas Land that I did.
Yes.
Which shot, if you saw all the snow in Christmas Land, that's real snow, because we were in Utah in November shooting a Christmas movie that aired December 12th.
That's amazing.
Yeah. But everybody's on board with knowing that the turnaround has to be, to be quick on those things. So, but it doesn't always work that way. Like we just recently shot some Christmas movies in like July and August, which is much more closer to what we normally do.
Yeah.
But they're not afraid now to do them super late if necessary.
Wow. So if you have special effects or green screen or those kinds of things in the movie, like, do you work with the visual effects team in your editing, or how does that work?
Well, it depends on what I slug all the visual effects. If it's a green screen and there's got to be like a plate, which is what we call it, like whatever the image is that's going to be on the green screen, I search that out, whether it's a stock footage or sometimes they shoot something. Like if it's car driving down to town, a lot of times they'll shoot the back plate. They'll put a camera and they'll drive a car down a street and they'll get that back plate for me. I do a temp version for the cut so everybody can see kind of what it's going to look like. And then once we're locked, because you never send anything to the VFX usually until we're locked, because you don't want to spend the time and the money doing a shot that ends up getting cut.
Right.
On bigger shows, like you hear about huge shows do it all the time, but we usually don't have a whole lot of visual effects shots in these Christmas movies. I mean, the driving stuff is all usually green screen, and a lot of times we add snow. Like we have fake snow on set, but then we like enhance it in CGI.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of that kind of stuff. And usually I just mark it, and then the director usually works with the VFX person in terms of giving notes about what he wants and everything. And by the time those shots come in, I'm usually off the show because I'm on to another show. So we just have them get cut. They get cut in at the lab when the lab is doing the final, putting everything together. They'll drop in the visual effects shots. They have somebody over there that does that because usually I'm long on to by the time the visual effects are done and we've delivered, I'm long on to another show.
Very interesting to me. What would you say is the hardest project that you've ever edited? That was the most difficult?
Oh gosh,
not just for
it's
Hallmark,
hard to
just
say. Oh, just for Hallmark?
Well, just in
Christmas
general.
Christmas for Hallmark, I'll say Chris. I'll keep it to Hallmark because if you go back, I've been cutting for 25 years, and usually like when there's no money and there's first-time directors who don't know what they're doing, and I've done a lot of those, but thankfully those are mainly long in my past. But for Hallmark, Christmas Land had to be the most difficult, not because of any of that. There was, the budget was the same as it normally is. The director was a wonderful director. I've worked with him many times. Sam Irvin, he's fantastic, delivered great. It was the schedule. We were so short. Yeah, as I was just describing, we were shooting that right up until the beginning of November. Amazing. And so there was no days off, because when the production takes a day off, I had to have the director in to do his notes. And so I worked, straight through the production. So that was probably the hardest one because of the schedule.
Amazing.
Shows, I mean, the difficulty of a show is usually based on the script. Like, if the story isn't working, that's editorially, as long as the coverage is there, I can make any particular scene work. But the issue is the whole movie working? And a lot of times that's script related, which you can do a lot of fixing in post. I can't tell you how many times we rewrite an entire scene in post. If you ever watch a movie and you see a scene where it seems like they're off camera a lot, like the person who's speaking isn't on camera, and then you cut to the other person and then the other, it's because they ADR'd and they rewrote the entire scene. We've rewritten entire scenes before to change things. It's like the last rewrite of the movie in post.
Fascinating. That's really interesting to me. Yeah. So you did. I'm still some of your other Hallmark projects. My Summer Prince.
Right. My Summer Prince was probably my favorite of all the Hallmark movies I did, because I think the script was really great. I love those two actors who I did another movie with. One Winter Weekend, they paired those same two actors up again, which is rare, but I think they had such a great chemistry. That they just wanted to do them again.
They were back.
It was Taylor Cole and Jack Turner.
Yeah, and
Taylor is wonderful.
I wasn't that big a fan of hers as far as her acting until this year. She has completely won me over. I thought I thought One Winter Weekend was excellent. It's still one of my favorites of the year. And I thought that Falling for You, her most recent one, was really good. And so, I'm converted, a Taylor Cole fan.
Oh, nice. I cut One Winter Weekend. I agree, she's great in that. And Jack is wonderful. Yeah. And My Summer Prince had those two, but also I think the script was really good. Yeah. There was something, pretty special about that one. They all have their own charm. But My Summer Prince was really, and maybe also because it wasn't a Christmas one. Yeah. I love Christmas as much as the next guy, but I've done so many Christmas movies. Having one that didn't have to revolve around the holiday was kind of nice.
Yeah, and you really have done all Christmas movies.
The other nice thing about that movie, this is the one that was supposed to be in Idaho and in the summer. So for the first time, we could go to Utah, where we shot this one as well, and you could actually see all the gorgeous mountains and everything. Usually we have to hide most of that because it's supposed to be Christmas time and it's supposed to be, some other place altogether. Yeah. And so we don't get to really utilize the beauty of Utah. And we were able to in My Summer Prince, which I think is just another thing to recommend it.
Yeah. It was supposed to be in like Coeur d'Alene or someplace like that, right? In Idaho.
I don't know if they I don't know if they said, if they did, it was probably like some fake town. I can't remember, but it was supposed to be Idaho. Yeah. It was supposed to be some small town in Idaho.
Yeah. That's interesting. Then you did Broadcasting Christmas that same year, 2016.
Yeah, Broadcasting Christmas was unusual for us because we shot it in Connecticut, which I also went on location for. That one I enjoyed. They don't play that as much as some of the other ones I find, but I mean maybe I'm just not paying attention. But that was Dean Cain and Melissa Joan Hart, and she's lovely, and Dean Cain is a wonderful guy too. Yeah. They're both just such nice people. And it was interesting, shooting out in Connecticut. We were in not the best part of Connecticut where we stayed. I mean, we shot in wonderful places, but we were like not to disparage Connecticut, I'm sure it's wonderful. We were like in Bridgeport, which is not maybe the best part of Connecticut, where we were staying. And also, when I go to Utah, I drive. So I have my car with me, but of course I'm not going to drive to Connecticut from LA. So I flew. So I didn't have a car, which made it sort of like not the best on location experience for me, but the movie was wonderful. The movie was very nice, and those two actors were so easy to work with.
Yeah, that one had a fun, snappy script, I thought. I enjoyed it. And yeah, so then SunsDried Romance, did you get to go to Mexico for this?
I did not get to go to Mexico,
Okay.
and thank God for that, because one of my best friends is a script supervisor who has been on many of these films. She was on 12 Gifts, and she did go to Aaron's wedding in Italy because she was available to go there, but I didn't. But anyway, she was there in Mexico, and she was telling me, and then the director told me when they came back up, it was like 110 degrees when they were down there. Everybody was absolutely miserable when they were shooting that movie because it was so hot and muggy and horrible. And I'm not a warm weather person anyway, even though I live in LA. So I was like so glad that I was just back in my air conditioned editing bay in LA, not down there in that 110 degree miserable weather.
Interesting.
It was a fun film. There was a lot of good production value. There was like the horseback riding and the zip lining and all of that wonderful stuff.
They've really stepped it up on their summer movies the last 2 years, and this one was fun. We really love Paul Campbell on this podcast. He's one of our favorites. So that was fun. Somebody we wish they used even more than they do. But yeah, and so then you had also last year Switch for Christmas, and you wanted to talk about the opening shot of Denver, quote unquote. There was actually Salt Lake City, which we thought was actually
Salt Lake City.
Kind of funny.
Yeah. Here's the thing. So I also did not go on location for Switch for Christmas, which is unfortunate because I would really love to meet Candace Cameron Bure, who I have tremendous respect for, especially in that film where she was playing twins. I think she just did a wonderful job, and I love her performance to death. But so yeah, they shot in Salt Lake City, but that's not the reason why the establishing shots of Denver are actually Salt Lake City. Those are obviously, I say obviously, maybe it's not obvious to other people. I mean, those are stock shots. We didn't have a drone that went out and shot Salt Lake City. And there wasn't very, I looked for Denver stock shots, and there wasn't any, those nice, wonderful aerial, beautiful shots of the city that didn't exist for Denver that I could find that we could afford. And so, Salt Lake City is a city in surrounded by snowy mountains. And I thought to myself, and no one ever said anything. I'm the one who picked them. I picked those Denver shots that were really Salt Lake City. But the other thing I would argue is, you live in Salt Lake City, or at least in Utah. Sure. So you're going to be aware of that. I would bet that 90% of the audience who has never been to Utah and never been to Denver will have no idea that that's not Denver, and will not think twice about it. Yeah. Only the people who actually live in Utah or live in Denver and realize, hey, that's not Denver, would really be aware of that.
Right.
At least that's my hope.
I think that there's a lot of truth to that. And we, I mean, we are just being silly. It's just kind of a funny thing. But yeah, the director of that, we've actually interviewed her, Lee Friedlander, and she's like a really cool director.
Yeah, no, Lee's great. That's the only film I've ever done for her. That was done for a different, the thing to realize is, like, the films are actually produced by production companies that are hired by Hallmark. Sure. And so, like, the ones that I do for Peter Sullivan, like 12 Gifts of Christmas, but even like Christmas Land, Summer Prince, Broadcast Christmas, most of those are done by a company called Hybrid.
Okay.
But SunsDried Romance and Switched for Christmas, and also One Winter Weekend, were all done by a company called Cartel.
Oh, interesting.
And so, so it's just different production companies.
Yeah.
And so Lee works for Cartel, which I just did like 3 films for. Those 3 films I just said, and so she did the one. I would love to work for her again. She was great, and that was another film. Switch for Christmas was another film that we were really long. We had to figure out what we were going to cut, and we ended up cutting all these flashbacks and stuff. There was all these flashbacks to when they were kids and everything that all got cut out of the film. So that was in post. A lot of things got changed in that film.
Interesting.
Structurally.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that Lee Freeland, I think she's good at, I think telling just a tad more modern stories than maybe some of the other, that I like that like for instance, she did this Royally Ever After this year where they were actually a couple from the beginning. And so they had to work on their relationship, and that was pretty
Right.
unique. And she has a movie actually playing. This is being recorded on the 20th of October, and she actually has a movie playing tonight about called Love of Course, which is about a woman whose daughter is going away to college. So it's like a little bit more mature.
Right.
Excuse me. It's a little bit more of a mature story. It's an interesting, different kind of character. I hope it's a good movie. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, I mean, she's a wonderful director. A lot of times, I mean, for Hallmark, is this for Hallmark? This movie that's done tonight?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, Hallmark like approves these scripts. I mean, the scripts get developed, but
Sure.
so it may just be to some degree a coincidence that she gets on these shows that have a more mature outlook.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, her approach also informs how that material is presented.
Yeah. And she did she did another really good one last year called All for Love, which was really well done. But anyway, yeah. So, and we already talked about One Winter Weekend. That one I really appreciated that you had these two relationships that I thought were pretty well done. They were really cute, but they were also like, I thought the dialogue was pretty solid, and I just really enjoyed it. And
the script was really good.
Mm-hmm.
That one, it also had a wonderful location. They shot that up in Winnipeg, which I did not go to because I can't work in Canada, but they did the post down here in LA.
Uh-huh.
And so all the skiing stuff and everything I think was like really good production value. And also, again, as we said, Jack and Taylor together are wonderful. But those secondary actors, who I can't remember their name, but the other couple, like her best friend, they're the two best friends who also became a couple. I thought they were really sweet and fun together.
Yeah,
agreed. So that film turned out really well. I thought.
I agree.
That's a good one.
So you said you have 4 coming up for Christmas this year?
Well, 3, I think.
3.
We just did 2 in Utah for Lifetime. One is called Jingle Bell, starring Tatiana Ali and Cornelia Smith. It's kind of a musical, sort of. I mean, as musical as we get. It's really a wonderful film. So I have no idea when any of these are airing, so forgive me for that. But Jingle Bell is one that we did. And then the next one we did is called My Christmas Inn, which is one that's supposed to take place in Alaska. And I'm blanking on the it's Tia Mowry from Sister Sister is the lead. She's the lead actress. And that's also a really nice film. We shot that up in I believe that was the one we shot up in Brigham City. Or was that I'm getting confused probably because we shot them back to back. So it was like I was in Utah for 2 months straight. Mm-hmm. It was just like one big long production. Well, we shot. I think Christmas Inn was shot down in Layton, which is probably only of interest to people who live in Utah. But we shot that sort of way down south, down in Layton, and then Bingham City is way north, and that's where I think we shot Jingle Bell. I think that now I will now firmly say that that's the case. But Jingle Bell has a wonderful cast. Tatiana Ali, but also oh my gosh, I'm going to blank on all of them. A lot of TV actors who played. Oh my gosh, the girl who played Rudy on Cosby Show. Oh my gosh, I feel so bad. Oh, and also Tempest. Yes, and gosh.
Yeah, Tempest Bledsoe. She was
Tempest Bledsoe, isn't it?
Yeah. So I'm excited for that for sure. I mean. And
here's a fun little thing for fans of Sister Sister, which I am a little too old for that so I never watched it.
Uh-huh.
But in the movie with Tia Mowry, her parents are played by the actors who played her parents on Sister Sister.
Right. Jack
Tim Reed and Jack A are playing
Nice.
her parents in the movie. So that's fun for people who are fans of that show. And she is also very good in the movie. I mean, Hallmark has really good performers. I mean, their lead actors are always, I think pretty solid. They rarely have one where there's an issue. Oh,
Right.
and then the third one that I have, which is for Hallmark, which is still in editing now. Although I only did the first cut, as we talked about, because I had to move on to other things, is called Christmas Wonderland.
Oh, okay.
And that stars
Emily Osment, I think.
Emily Osment. Thank you. I'm so bad with names. I'm sorry. Because I also was not on location for that. So if I'm on location, I meet the actors, then I remember their names.
Uh-huh.
But if I'm not, then it usually goes out of my head. But yeah, Emily Osment is in it, and that's a fun film. Kelly Hu is another name that's in it.
Uh-huh.
I've worked with her a few times in the past. She's wonderful as always. So that's one for Hallmark that I did this year. That'll be coming out Christmas time, I presume.
When it gets up to Christmas, are you kind of like Christmased out, or do you still like watching Christmas movies?
I'm so kind of over Christmas. I mean, I love Christmas as much as the next guy, but I mean, sometimes I do 4 or 5 Christmas movies in a year.
Sure.
And it starts around June, and I edit them through sometimes, October, November.
Yeah.
And so I've just spent 6 solid months or more, or close to that.
Sure.
Surrounded by Christmas. So when Christmas time rolls around, I let everyone else now enjoy the fruits of my labor, and I just sort of like, step aside.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I'm kind of excited this year. There's a movie, an indie movie called Anna and the Apocalypse coming out on November 30th.
Okay.
And I'm really excited for it because I just feel like it'll be sort of a breath of fresh air because it's a zombie apocalypse musical. teen movie comedy.
Okay.
It looks just way out there and stuff, and I think it'll be good after watching, like, by the time it comes out I will have seen like 25 Christmas movies, and I think to see something that's like a zombie, nice.
The funny thing is you're not alone in that. I find that like people who watch these Hallmark Christmas movies watch all of them. They just like they have Hallmark turned on nonstop. I mean, there's such sort of brand loyalty. My mother watches these Hallmark Christmas movies, and like when I go home for Christmas, I mean, she's got that TV in the kitchen turned on to Hallmark Channel all day long, every day.
Yeah.
And it's amazing. So when I started cutting Hallmark Christmas movies, she was so excited for me.
She was really proud.
Yeah. So that was fun.
That's really cute. Well, so we like to end our interviews with just some silly questions. So normally we have a non Christmas one, but we're going to do the Christmas Teen Beat questions.
Okay.
So to end the interview. So, okay. What is your favorite holiday drink?
I guess eggnog. Is that too boring to say?
No, not at all. Do you make homemade eggnog, or do you just get the carton?
I just get the carton. Yeah. I don't do anything homemade.
Okay. So, what is your favorite holiday cookie or treat? I
love a good sort of like a Christmas cake, like a good, I'm not like a big cookie kind of fan, but I love a good cake. So I love a good like powdery, fluffy cake. That works.
That sounds good. What's your favorite Christmas song or carol?
White Christmas. Gotta be White Christmas, right? Yeah. Bing Crosby, White Christmas.
Good one. Favorite Christmas movie, and you can do Hallmark, non-Hallmark, whatever.
Favorite Christmas movie.
Like that one.
Does Die Hard count as a Christmas movie? I'll say Die Hard. I work on so many Christmas movies. Yeah. It's hard for me to be, to pick one or.
This is.
I'll say Die Hard.
November is the 30th anniversary of Die Hard.
Oh my gosh. I saw that in the theater. I'm like, I'm so old now. Anyway.
Okay. What is your favorite holiday tradition? Like decorating the tree or
Yeah, no, I don't really, I mean, I gotta say, I don't really have any Christmas holiday traditions per se.
uh-huh.
I am actually going home for Christmas for the first time in quite a while. I usually end up going home for Thanksgiving. My
Yeah.
parents live in Tennessee, and
Uh-huh.
so I usually end up going home for Thanksgiving. But this year, because I'm actually going to be working straight through Thanksgiving, I'm going to go home for Christmas for the first time in several years. So well, I'll have to figure out what my family's traditions are, and I'll just plug into that.
Nice. All right. So, what's a memorable Christmas gift that you've either given or received?
I remember the most excited I've ever been for a Christmas gift was when I was probably 6 or 7 years old, and I got one of those sort of I think it's Mattel. It was like those race car tracks with all these little cars, and like it was like a two-story little racetrack car thing that you could do. Like it was a little remote control, not remote, but little electric cars. And
Uh-huh.
I played with it. I mean, I was so excited by that when I was probably 6 or 7 years old, and that was my most exciting Christmas ever.
Nice. There's nothing like Christmas with kids. It makes such a difference.
Oh yeah. Oh, for sure.
So, Scrooge or the Grinch? Which one do you think?
Oh, the Grinch.
The
Oh,
Grinch.
I love me some Grinch.
Yeah, yeah.
Not that I'm a Grinch, but I love all versions of the Grinch. I'm very excited about the new Grinch movie
Ah,
that's coming out. I can't wait to see it.
nice.
So yeah, 100% Grinch.
Okay, good. Clear lights or colored?
In movies, clear lights because they're better. They show up better. But in real life, I like colored lights.
Okay, good. Are you a good gift wrapper or not so much?
I'm good at paying somebody to wrap my gifts for me. I'm very, very good at that.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. That's more my method, unless
Yeah.
I have a lot of time. Or I think the gift bag is always a good
Gift
good
bag.
option.
Gift bag is good. Gift bag is a good backup
Yeah,
if no one's available to wrap your gifts for you.
yeah. So, do you have an ugly sweater that you like to wear?
I do have an ugly sweater. We actually bought it because when we were doing Christmas Land, we had ugly Christmas sweater day
Uh-huh.
on the set, so everyone had to come to set wearing an ugly Christmas sweater, and I didn't have one, so I went there and went to a store and bought like the ugly. It's sort of green. It has like a weird tree on it, and it just looks horrible. It's got all these like silvery bells on it. It's the worst.
Yeah.
It's
So
the
they
worst.
have like themes and stuff like that with this cast and crew. Like the crew that all wear a ugly sweater.
Yeah, it was just the
Stuff like that?
crew. The crew. And they were like, they said, okay, tomorrow everybody come wearing ugly Christmas sweaters tomorrow.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so the whole crew came wearing ugly Christmas sweaters. It was just like a thing.
Yeah.
So I
That's
had to
so
go buy
funny.
one.
Yeah. Do you ever have any time to kind of explore Utah at all, like go skiing or anything like that? It's just too crazy.
I occasionally have some time. I'm not a big skier, and we're usually there not during ski season.
Oh yeah, yeah.
But there's some wonderful hiking I've done, and I like to visit like museums and stuff. I this last time I went to two. I'm trying to remember the name. One of it was like a Pioneer Day kind of
Oh
thing
yeah, yeah.
down near Orem, I think. That was kind of nice. And then I went to the Hill Air Force Base for the Air
Oh,
Force. There's like a air museum there,
I
which
haven't
was
been
really
to.
wonderful.
Yeah.
Yeah, Hill
Interesting.
Air Force Base has this wonderful aviation museum. It's like the history of
Uh-huh.
aviation in Utah,
Yeah.
and that was really nice. So I like to explore those kind of things.
Uh-huh.
Um, and
Cool.
also, I know so many people now that live in Utah. So when I do have times off, I love to visit the people that I know there
Uh-huh.
because I only see them when I'm there. So that that also takes some time. But also, it's just a lot
Yeah.
of working when I'm there.
Sure. Yeah. Well, very cool. Well, I have really enjoyed talking with you. This has been very interesting. We'll have to have you on again,
So,
maybe after we've seen your slate, or sometime again next year. I know Amber was really looking forward to talking to you. She hadn't been sick.
Yeah, I wanted to talk to Amber about her Good Witch podcast. I'm a huge Good Witch fan, and I listen to you guys' Good Witch podcast. And Amber is my favorite. With snarky Amber, just makes my day.
Oh, well,
so yeah, please.
She makes
I'd be happy to come on again. You just let me know when you want me to come on. This was a lot of fun.
Yeah, it was really great. So, do you have social media or anything like that you want to share? Or
I'm on Facebook, but I'm on Twitter, but I never go on there. So, you can find me on Facebook.
Good.
I guess that's like the one place I'm at. I don't really do a whole lot of social media.
Okay,
I'm an old guy, so that's why I'm on Facebook. I'm not on any of those things that you kids use, like the Instagram or the whatever stuff is. That's for you youngins.
Very good. Okay. Well,
okay.
You've been such a delight to talk to. I really enjoyed it. And
thank you.
So, and what are the 3 movies again this year that you have? You have Christmas Inn,
Jingle Bell, My Christmas Inn, and Christmas Wonderland.
Christmas Wonderland. That's right. So we'll definitely be looking forward to all 3 of those. And let us know if you have any questions for Randy or what you thought of what we talked about. We'd love to hear your comments either on Twitter or here in the comment section. Please put in your reviews on iTunes. It really helps the podcast out and helps people to find us. We really appreciate it. And you can find me at Rachel's Reviews on iTunes and on YouTube. And you can find the podcast at Hallmarkies Podcast on all over social media and Instagram, Twitter, all that fun stuff. We're very excited about the upcoming Christmas season. We're going to have lots of fun coverage coming up. So we really look forward to sharing that with all of you guys. And thanks again, Randy. You're the best. We really appreciate it.
Oh, it was my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
All right. We'll talk again soon. Bye.